Well, first of all, I'm not questioning his patriotism. He's a patriot, I'm sure. What I'm saying is that in his rhetoric, I very rarely hear him say the things that I used to hear Ronald Reagan say, the things I used to hear Bill Clinton say about how much he loves America. I do hear him criticize America much more often than other American presidents. And when it's not in the context of an overwhelming number of statements about the exceptionalism of America, it sounds like he's more of a critic than he is a supporter.
Okay, Giuliani opened that comment by saying he was not questioning the president's patriotism. What he had said, again, was, quote, "I do not believe the president loves America." So here's the actual dictionary definition of the word patriot. Quote, "A person who loves and strongly supports or fights for his or her country." So Rudy Giuliani is correct. He was not questioning the president's patriotism. He was flat out calling the president unpatriotic. So anyway, Scott Walker, who again was sitting just a few seats from Giuliani last night, was asked about Giuliani's claim today on CNBC.
The mayor can speak for himself. I'm not going to comment on what the president thinks or not. He can speak for himself as well.
Did you agree with those comments? Were you offended by those comments? What was your reaction when you heard them?
I'm in New York. I'm used to people saying things that are
you know, come see, come saw. People say the president's not patriotic. I want to be completely clear about what was going on last night. In addition to Giuliani, the dinner attendees were reported to have included Larry Kudlow, Arthur Laffer, and Stephen Moore, as well as anti-tax activist Grover Norquist. Central figures in the GOP's decades-long love affair with supply-side economics, whose driving concern is cutting taxes for the rich. What they want is to stick with the Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan agenda, and they're now auditioning to find a better vessel to sell that agenda to the American people. And Scott Walker, they seem to think they may have found their man. Joining me now, Charles Peirce, writer-at-large at Esquire magazine and a staff writer at Grantland. Charlie, let's start with you. It's been a long time since I saw a politician say something that was preceded by, "I know this is a horrible thing to say, but," get to the clause, comma, and then just keep going.
That's right. Once you get to the phrase, I know this is a terrible thing to say, but, is when you take off your sock and stuck it in your mouth. And then you don't talk for the rest of the evening. Chris, remember when you and I were young and McCarthyite used to be an insult?
Yes. I mean, yes, I do.
Well, it's not anymore. It is permissible within mainstream Republican and mainstream conservative dialogue to say anything about this president.
Really, it really is. And this is something, I mean, the president doesn't love this country. He wasn't raised the way you and I were, which is also just gross and whatever the heck that, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but he wasn't raised like you and I were raised, which, you know, who knows what Rudy Giuliani meant by that. But also, the fact I was genuinely, I will say, I probably shouldn't be surprised, genuinely surprised that Walker didn't just say, of course I think the president loves his country. Rudy Giuliani doesn't speak for me on that. Easy.
Well, I mean,
like he wouldn't say it.
Hey, he's still backing and filling on Charles Darwin. He's got to work his way up to Rudy Giuliani. No, I mean, not only is this a party full of bullies, it's a party full of cowards. I mean, you heard Rudy Giuliani try to walk this thing back today, and as you pointed out, saying, "I wasn't questioning his patriotism." Well, you weren't questioning his sense of style, pal. Everybody knew what you were saying. Everybody in that room knew what you were saying. And then to have Walker come out and say, "Well, it's New York, you can hear, you know, anybody say anything." This wasn't some guy yelling out the window of a cab. This wasn't some guy in a soapbox at Central Park. This guy was standing up for an audience of the creme de la creme of the conservative movement. I mean, you talk about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I mean, you had the four horsemen of the fiscal apocalypse in that room.
And to me, what that signifies, I think, is that they are auditioning. They see in Scott Walker, Matt O'Brien, I believe, a writer I follow on Twitter, I think had this to say that basically he's the candidate for people that think Republicans just need to change their message or their packaging and not really change any of their ideas. That Scott Walker, there's a sense that, okay, maybe this can be the guy who can successfully run on essentially the Ryan budget and the Mitt Romney agenda.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's the Mitt Romney who doesn't have a car elevator. You know, he's got this weird kind of blue-collar thing going now, and he's a victim because people have shouted terrible things outside his house. And, you know, I saw this coming the night I was in Milwaukee, the night he won his recall. I said, this guy is everything everybody thinks Chris Christie is. All Chris Christie has done is yell at the various bêtes noires of the Republican Party. This guy's beaten them all. This guy has heads on his wall. And I thought that was a very compelling thing. The only thing I wondered about, well, actually, two things I wondered about. Number one, why so many people who work for his campaigns go to jail. And number two, whether or not he would be able to, overcome this charisma deficit he obviously had. And he did that in Iowa. And now I think people are looking at him as a serious contender.